Okay, so Hare Krishna, dear ladies. Welcome to the August Urban Devi Sangha and Women's Discussion Group. A special welcome to those joining us for the first time. If you are joining us for the first time, please write it in the chat so that we can all say hello. I promise we're a very welcoming and warm group, and we would love to know that you're here for the first time. So my name is Damodar Priya Devi Dasi, and I co-host this monthly gathering with our dear Rukmini Walker and Surabhi Govinda Devi Dasi. However, we have a very special guest as always, and let me introduce her to you now. So Vidarbhasuta Devi Dasi majored in economics and worked as a TV journalist before moving to the US from India. She is a professional storyteller and she's a certified Soma Breathwork Instructor. And Vidarbhasuta is also a spiritual life coach, practicing and teaching Bhakti Yoga for the last 28 years in DC. She's a disciple of His Holiness Mukunda Goswami and associated with ISKCON since 1996. And she, along with her husband, Loka, spearhead a vibrant spiritual community in Maryland where they host regular weekly programs. They homeschooled their son, Nimai, who graduated from UPenn and works in DC. And they live in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and also spend time in Mayapur, India. So hopefully that's getting you really nice and excited because we have a great topic today from Vidarbhasuta, the inspiring tale of Amara. And she's going to be doing a storytelling circle with us to tell us about the extraordinary journey of Amara, of resilience, redemption, and how this is a story of her struggle to reclaim her inner light. So thank you so much, Vidarbhasuta, for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Damodar Priya. Thank you so much for Rukmini Prabhu for inviting me to this wonderful Sangha. I've been reading and watching your videos for the longest time, and it's just a great honor for me to be here. And today, I thought I would share a story because I love stories. I always have. When I was a little kid, my grandma would tell me stories, and sometimes she would tell me the same story over and over and over again, and I still loved it. And the Bhakti process, our Bhakti journey, has so many beautiful stories. So the story that I'm planning to tell or share today is actually loosely based on a South African folk tale that I have repurposed for our Sangha here. It's a story about shadow and light. Now, when I was a little girl, I grew up at my maternal grandmother's house, and it was a house that was surrounded by bamboo forest. And I was alone with my grandparents. And the one thing I remember every year was around the time of Diwali, the Festival of Lights. And my special work was to pick up those clay lamps and place them in different corners of the house, especially those corners which were dark. And so I just loved doing it. And so I would take those clay lamps and I would place them in a certain corner. But I was always fascinated by the fact that right beneath that burning flame, I would see a spot of darkness. And I would just see how light and darkness, they were somehow coexisting so close to each other. And so when I came across the story many years later, it immediately caught my attention and my heart. And so this is a story about a beautiful girl, a daughter of a chief named Amara. And her very name means one who is deathless. Now, for a moment, I want you to imagine whatever is your definition of beauty. Amara was that. Maybe you can imagine her long hair that cascaded all the way down to her knees. Maybe you can imagine her eyes that were like lotus petals. Maybe it was her smile that lit up her entire face. Maybe it was the way she became very quiet when she saw somebody in pain. Maybe it is the fact that she was very hardworking. Whatever you can imagine beauty to be, Amara was that. But there was something else that was very special about Amara. And that was that she had a giving, beautiful heart. She was known in her village as a giver of joy. Whenever she would come across anyone who was sad or lonely or in pain, she would stop. She would sit with them and she would sing a song to them or tell them a story. Everybody in this village loved her. Now, across from where she lived, separated by the land of recently deceased, was the land of darkness. And in that land lived Shadow. And Shadow noticed her. He noticed her beauty, her qualities, and he was attracted to her. The more he noticed her, the more he was attracted to her, the more he wanted her. He wanted to possess her, to have her, to make her his own at his beck and call, to control her. But he couldn't just cross over that land that separated her land from his land and just go over and just grab her. No. So he came up with a plan. He first walked into the land of the recently deceased. Now you see, Shadow has a mantra by which he lives. A mantra is sort of like a life, like a mission statement. And his mantra is, I want it. 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 I want it all. This is Shadow. So he saw a carpenter who was carving these long, beautiful fingers. As soon as he saw that, he wanted that, and he grabbed those fingers from the carpenter and he placed it on his form. And then as he walked along, he came across someone with broad, strong shoulders, and he grabbed those and he placed that on his form. I want it. I want it. I want it. I want it all. And then as he progressed a little bit further along, he came across someone with a white chest, a gleaming stomach. And he kept grabbing, and he kept grabbing, and he kept placing it on his form. And then he got a tongue that could speak 1,000 languages. And then a voice that could captivate and cast a spell on whoever heard it. You know the kind of voice I'm talking about, right? And with all of that, dressed in clothes of gold and silver, he decided to cross over that line that divided his land from the land of Amara and walked onto the streets where Amara lived. Now, when people saw him, they were mesmerized. They were attracted. They had never seen anyone like him before. He walked like a god. And when he spoke, people were enchanted. Now, when Amara saw him, she was also captivated by him. She couldn't stop looking at him. She would glance at him from the corner of her eyes, and she so wanted to be with him. But there was something about shadow that Amara could feel in her gut. She could feel that there was something off about him. There was something not right. Something that made her feel unsafe around him. So she just decided to stay away. Shadow, he wasn't going to have that. He had not come to this place just to attract the attention of the village people. He had come to get Amara, and get he would. So one day, when everyone had gone to sleep in the afternoon and Amara was all by herself by the well, he walked right up to her, grabbed her, threw her over his shoulders, dragged her, and carried her from across where she lived, and then re-entered the land of the recently deceased, where he gave away those long fingers, the broad chest and the strong shoulders and the tongue that would speak 1,000 languages, and his voice gave it all away and took on his shadowy form. He brought her into this land of darkness and threw her in one corner and said to her, "This is where you're going to be. Here is a spinning wheel for you. And as long as you spin me clothes of gold and silver, you will not die." Amara had no choice. She had no choice. She sat with her spinning wheel and she started to look around through the veil of darkness. She saw that there were so many others like her that shadow had captured. And they all huddled up to her and they started to console her and said, "This is how we have lived. Just do as he tells you to. Follow him and you'll be okay." So Amara, not knowing any way out, decided to sit with the spinning wheel. And as instructed by him, she used her hair to make clothes of gold and silver. And as she did that, she thought to herself that maybe I can sing the songs that previously brought me such great joy. Maybe these songs can help me in this place and time of despair. So she started to spin and sing. Oh, 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 oh. But to no avail. She was not consoled by this song anymore. And in this way, time passed, as time always does. The days turned into weeks, into months, and Amara just continued to stay there, and Shadow would come and see her, and he would make her do as he wanted her to do, as he wanted to do. And he would speak to her in very demeaning ways. And Amara simply kept tolerating. Now, one day, Amara decided to go to the nearby river to collect some water. So that day, when she went to the river and she bent down to collect some water, all of a sudden, the water started to spin and the water started to foam up. And from inside that water, she saw a face, a grotesque face of an old lady whose face was ashen and whose eyelashes came all the way down to her cheeks. And clumps of gray hair fell into the water. And to this day, we do not know whether she was a creature of the river or whether she was her future self. But this lady looked at Amara straight into her eyes and she said, "You do not belong here. You do not belong here. You must leave or you will die." Amara was horrified when she heard that. She didn't want to see that lady. She didn't want to hear from her. So she ran back to her corner and she tried to forget that lady. She wanted to forget the words of this lady, but try as hard as she could. She couldn't forget those words because she could feel that there was some truth to what that old lady had said, that she didn't belong here, and that if she didn't try to leave, she would die. So one day, Amara decided to escape. She looked around and she thought, this is not my place. I want to leave this place and see if I can run away. And she knew that there was this invisible land that separated her land from this land of darkness. So one night, when she thought that everyone was asleep, and she thought that Shadow too was fast asleep, she decided to creep out and started to run and run and run faster and faster and faster towards that invisible line so that she could escape. But back in the home of Shadow, Shadow stirred in his sleep. He could tell that someone was trying to run and escape his land. And he woke up. And using his magic powers, he could tell that Amara was the one who was trying to run. So he immediately got up and started to chase after Amara. And he ran with long strides, powerful strides. And he ran and he finally caught up with Amara. And he threw her down on the ground and pinned her arms and said, "What audacity! After all that I have done for you, this is how you repay me?" And then he dragged her back to her corner and said, "This is where you have to stay." Amara was heartbroken. She was really hoping that she could leave this place of darkness. But what could she do? She just, as the others in the world of darkness had given her advice, she decided, let me try and follow. Maybe I'm just being foolish and wanting to leave. Let me try and do what they are doing. So she took a deep breath and decided to just stay there and follow whatever Shadow wanted her to do. He violated her, he abused her. She just continued to stay. And again, the days turned into weeks, into months. But Amara, being Amara, She could not find that place of acceptance in her heart. She just could not accept this. Her life, instead of becoming easier, kept getting harder and harder for her, where she just could not stand it anymore. And she thought to herself that shadow controls my life. There has to be something more than this. And if I don't follow him, he's going to kill me. Why should I continue in this way? So, feeling great despair, she once decided to just go back to that river where she had met that old woman. She decided to go back to that river. And she decided that if I cannot find a way out, if there is no way out, I would rather just drown myself in this water, in this river. And so one evening, when she thought that everyone was busy spinning and no one would notice that she had gone back to the river, she decided to walk back to the river. She came to the edge. She knelt down and she just wept. She wept torrents of tears. And then she finally looked up into the sky and said, I was once known as a giver of joy, but today I have no joy to offer to anyone. I am caught by shadow, thrown in this world of darkness where I have no freedom. My heart longs to be free, to soar in the open skies, but this is my condition. And then she just put her hands up in the air and said, Is there anyone who can help me? Is there anyone who can bring me out of this place of darkness, from the tyranny of shadow? Is there anyone? And as she called out with her deep angst, her deep longing, she heard a voice. This was a voice of an unknown friend, a song that she heard of an unknown friend who seemed somehow very familiar, very known, very distant, and yet so close to her heart. And when she heard that song, for the first time, she felt a sense of Yatha prakashayati eka kritsnam lokam imam ravi kshetram kshetri tatha kritsnam prakashayati bharata. Why do you weep, my friend? You are like the sun, brilliant and luminous. There is no shadow or darkness that can overcome you. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvam idam tatam vinashamavyyasyascha na kaschid kartum arhati. You are indestructible, beginningless, eternal. No weapon, no water, nothing of this world can touch you. Why do you weep, my friend? Teshamev anukampartham aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atmabhavasto jnanadipena bharata. I'm seated in your heart as your beloved, as your best friend. You're never alone. And I shall destroy by my power any darkness that overwhelms you. I'm, after all, just a name away. Amara looked at him and said, "By what name should I call you?" And he said, "I have so many names, and I am fully present in each and every one of those names. Call me by a name that is closest to your heart." He Krishna, He Yadava, He Sakheti, Govinda Damodara, Madhaveti, Govinda Damodara, Madhaveti. Amara sang and called out the names that she knew. And as she did that, she felt for the first time a ray of hope, a light that she felt that she could reclaim. She walked back to her corner in the land of darkness, but this time she walked with a little swing in her step. She went back to that corner and she slept like she had never slept in a long time. The next day, Shadow came to see her. The shadow could tell that there was something different about Amara today. She didn't seem like the same person. And Amara was different. She felt that she was reclaiming herself. She was reclaiming her light. So when Shadow came and saw Amara, this time Amara looked at him straight in the eye. And she began to sing and call out the name of her beloved, of her dearmost friend. Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. He Krishna, He Yadava, He Sakheti. Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. And then she noticed something amazing. That shadow, which loomed so large and was larger than life and was controlling her for the longest time, she saw that shadow begin to recede in the background and recede into nothingness. She was now truly deathless. She had found her own light, and shadow had no chance of standing in front of this light. Now, at this point, Amara had a choice. She was actually free. And if she wanted, she could just cross over that line and go back to the land that she had come from. But she looked around. She looked around and she saw that there were so many others who were also, who had been captured by shadow, who were thrown in their little corners, in those corners of darkness, not knowing where to go, what to do. So she decided to stay. And she decided to go to every single person and remind them that they too were a part of pure light, and that they were not alone, and that there was a beloved within their own hearts who was just a name away. And then she would just sing to them, Hey Krishna, Hey Yadava, Hey Sakheti, Govinda Damodara, Madhaveti. And in this way, this land of darkness, the kingdom of shadow, was transformed into a land of light.
I'm supposed to be a host, but I'm trying not to cry so much. Oh, so beautiful.
Thank you.
I've tried to gather myself together into my hosting capabilities, but I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Vidarbhasuta Devi Dasi, for that.
Beautiful. We're all being pulled into the light by your sweetness.
It's only, thank you.
Hey, so I know that we're all very moved, and it feels almost like we need to take a breath to sit with the story. With that in mind, I will be pausing the recording so that we can go into our breakout rooms to really fully digest this. But before I do, I just want to share with those who are going to be seeing this online our reflection questions that we will be talking about, just so that you can do this as well, is what does this story evoke in you? And what does this remind you of? And we'll be right. Okay, so Hare Krishna, welcome back. This is our Q&A and reflection section. This is a great opportunity for those of us who really feel inspired to share with Vidarbhasuta and all of us, like what really came up for you. Was there something from the breakout sessions that you really want to share with everyone? Or if you have any questions for our speaker, this is the perfect time to do so. So please, you can either raise a virtual hand or you can unmute yourself. And if people are feeling, Chitraleka, I can count on you. Please go ahead and unmute and share.
Hare Krishna. I hope you can listen to me properly because
we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Tell us, Chitraleka, tell us where you are though.
Okay, so I'm in this beautiful this is the outskirts of Medellin, Colombia. It is called El Retiro. It's a little village which is all about nature. If you can see here, I have a little river down there. And yes, I really wanted to like have a walk today, but also have my urban Devi Sangha. So mixing them up was ideal. So thank you, Vidarbhasuta, for that amazing storytelling and chanting. And it was so deep. And I was actually sharing with Rukmini that I loved also, dear Damodar, that you said that like rooms they split like randomly, because I was eager to talk to Rukmini, and it was like a Krishna's answer. So so it was beautiful. And I was sharing that I've been going through a lot, like a lot of movements in life. I came back from Mexico just last year. I was living there for the last almost 10 years. And I since everything's like very new now to me, like I'm trying to get things together about my job, about my where I'm living and everything. So I really get into the shadow realm very easily. And the last couple of days were like, there I had a trip which gave me a lot of signals, but also then I began feeling a little bit anxious about my next steps. And when you began chanting, I was feeling as if I was Amara. I was feeling during all the story as if I was her, like going through all these challenges about going, yeah, like through so much. And when you began chanting, it really it had a soothing effect, which automatically gave me like relief. So I really want to thank you because that chanting was, yeah, it came from the heart. And since it did, I could feel it connected with my heart. And I was telling Rukmini, like, my God, it gives me hope that we can reach out to Krishna just by saying his name. And the effect is so immediate. So I mean, the calm came to me just like very easily when you began chanting, and I was so moved. So I am very inspired, and I was telling Rukmini that I've been wanting to like improve my kirtan abilities. I love to chant, but I'm beginning to learn Mridanga, and I felt this was like a signal that, like, yes, every time I am chanting Krishna's names, I feel as if I would, I mean, as if I was eternal. I know I am, but I can experience that, let's say, that fact, my eternal being, my my like harmonic nature. So I really want to thank you. And yes, I would ask you as a question, like, probably what would be an advice for you whenever we're feeling like the shadows are that we're getting into this shadow parts of our minds, or like, and if we don't remember to chant in that particular moment, because I know sometimes when I'm feeling like stressed or something, sometimes I immediately begin chanting and I feel relief. But some other times, I don't know, the pressure is so high that I can't even like, stop and ask Krishna, like, no, like chant his name. So what would be a suggestion, like whenever we're feeling overwhelmed or whenever the shadows are like pulling us away from our bhakti? So what to do with when those, when those moments, in those moments we can't remember to sing?
Well, thank you so much. I think your words really resonated. That, I think it's, as you said, it's the name and somehow chanting, and we all have that experience. But then there are times when it seems to be so overwhelming for us that in that moment, it's very hard to remember to chant. And all we can do perhaps is just, I can share what I do is in those moments. I think even as I'm crying, at some level, I'm just opening myself up and saying, please help, just putting, just like what Amara did. She was so overwhelmed, and all she could do was just put her hands up and say, please help me. Please help me. And I always find that when I try to do that, at least calling out for that, pick me up, please, help me. I find that because he's so, he's always so attentive, seated in our heart, there is a reciprocation. And also having people around me who I'm close to, who I can approach, and they remind me and they give me the strength. So, we in Bhakti, we are all about we find strength and this Sangha, for example, Urban Devi Sangha, it's so beautiful because it's allowing us it's giving us a way to remind each other. And we need all the help because it's not easy. Sometimes the shadows are so strong and they overwhelm. They we feel fearful, and it's all, and so the more we can open ourselves to receiving, whether it's in the way of calling out or in the way of our friendships. I heard something just the other day that devotional or spiritual friendships are so important, a place where we can just go and just share that I'm unable to. I may know that this is what I should be doing, but I don't have the strength. I'm not able to. And to just have that safe space where we can share and receive love and compassion and even strength. I find that in my life, this is the only way I've been able to continue. And I don't know if Rukmini Prabhu would kindly add and share.
Thank you so much. It's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would love to share, but I want to hear from everybody else first, and then I'll share.
Yes, so we have next we have Sharmila has her hand up. Sharmila, can you please share?
Haribol. Thank you very much, Vidarbha Mata, for the beautiful story. This second time I heard, I had the good fortune of hearing the Amara story in our Potomac temple. So it's very moving and very powerful. And it reminds, as you said, the importance of our spiritual association, because, the shadow is something that all of us encounter, and especially, the younger ones, when they are faced with this shadow, they have no means. They're so vulnerable. And that's how we lose our young ones, is they don't know how to deal with this shadow that overwhelms them. They don't know how to overcome this shadow. It's so powerful. It just leaves them at the brink of death. And they, if they had the good fortune of just calling out to Krishna and seeing that all, the essence of Gita, which says that we're just not something that we face. We are much more than, our souls are much more than what we face as humans in this body. That perspective is like so powerful. It would help anyone who's encountering this shadow to have that strength and move on. And that's the reason, I think, is as you just said, the spiritual associations are extremely important than the material associations, because the material world is full of showing I'm better than you. Oh, everything is good. I can, if I show my vulnerability, I am bad, or I'm, I am disabled or something. It shows that thing. But in spirituality, we are all on the same playing field. We can show that everyone here are saying we are not better, you are better than us. We are in that level of consciousness. That's the humbleness, that's the the surrender the spirituality teaches us. And I truly hope and pray that everyone, every young soul out there, whoever is facing this shadow, gets this beautiful opportunity to seek out help to Krishna and the spiritual association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's very beautiful that how we have to, when the more we are together, packed closely together, the easier spiritual life is. And thank you for sharing that. It's very beautiful.
Yes, thank you, Sharmila. And we actually have a question. I know Leela Kishori has her hand up, but I just have a question in the chat from Scarlett. She's on a speech fast, so she can't speak. And she writes, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance of glories to Prabhupada, of glories to you all. May I humbly ask, who is the controller of the shadow?
Wow. Actually, this was a question that we were just discussing day before yesterday with a friend of mine, and she was saying, where does shadow get his power from? So same question, who is the controller of shadow? Prabhupada, describes that so well, that shadow is simply the absence of light and has no existence without light. So when we face the sun, there is no shadow. But when we turn our back from the sun, then we encounter these shadows. So there is, shadow simply gets his power from our desire to somehow turn away or forget that light that we have. Otherwise, and that's the reason why as soon as Amara remembers that she's actually a part of that light, darkness loses his power. So he's, yeah. And again, I would like to defer it to Rukmini Prabhu. Please share your thoughts if you would like to answer this question.
Let's see if anybody else has a hand up. I see Leela Kishore.
Yeah, Leela Kishore does. But if you want to answer in between with me,
No,
just
I
to
can
keep
say
up with
something after Leela Kishore. I'm
Okay.
just loving the conversation.
Great.
But
So Leela
okay.
Kishore, can you please unmute and share?
Hare Krishna, good morning. First of all, thank you so much, Mataji, for reminding me personally of the power of storytelling to take me deeply, deeply within, sometimes more than anything else. And I also want to say thank you, Damodar Priya, for letting Krishna make the decisions because I was in the absolute fit like a glove breakout room with just exactly who I needed to be in that room with. And what I wanted to share was that the part of the story that really touched me was because of a personal experience in 2020. Two of my sons left 56 days of one another. I was not initiated yet, but I was under the care of my brother, who is now my spiritual master, and someone who is now my god sister. And when the second one left his body, I was literally broken. And I was trying to chant, and I could not. I could not find the words. And I called, who is now my god sister, but at the time was just a devotee caring for me. And she was at her job, and I was sobbing. I said, I can't chant. Can you help me? And she said, just a minute. And she left her job and went outside and chanted over the phone. And eventually, even through my tears, I was able to begin to call out to Krishna along with her. And so the part of the story that struck me was the compassion of Amara to go back and to say, I'm going to bring the light to you. Even if you can only hear me, I'm going to bring the light to you. And how important it is that we remember it is not just fallen souls suffering outside of ISKCON, that there are people suffering within our organization, and we need to always be aware of this and find whatever our individual way is to bring the light and to continue to minister to them with Krishna. So thank you so much. You have touched my heart this morning. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Leela Kishore, Mataji. It's so wonderful. And yes, I'm beginning to appreciate more and more the power of storytelling. And I once read that the shortest distance from the head to the heart is actually a story. And I see that because my whole life, I've been studying and teaching the Bhagavad Gita, and I find the storytelling really allows us to enter into the heart space. And it's so beautiful what you just also shared about just having the time and those friendships that can carry us, because we all need that in different times of our life when we just feel just really, and even it doesn't matter who we are, we may be practicing, or we may belong here or belong there, but shadow has a way of, and we sometimes find ourselves feeling overwhelmed. So to have those friendships that can chant with us, be with us, that, we can cry in front of them and they can hold us, I think it's the greatest gift of our lives. So I think we have to, somehow create that community.
Thank you, Leela Kishore, and thank you, Vidarbhasuta. And I think we have a low, Rukmini, so that you can.
Oh, wow, so much.
Yes.
So much. Well, I was also just really, really so moved. And Damodar Priya and I were looking at each other, both moved to tears. And this was so powerful. And maybe to go backwards a little bit from what you just said, you just said that you heard that the shortest distance between from the head to the heart is through story. And that was so striking to me, because I remember hearing that the longest journey we will ever take in our lives is the journey from the head to the heart. So how amazing and a heart opening it is to think that that longest journey can be taken through story, through singing, through chanting, through calling out to our most beloved person. And yeah, you know, so much. But I was just on a Zoom call right before Urban Devi this morning, and someone mentioned that had just seen a statistic that 90% of Americans are suffering now. They have a statistic, 90% of Americans are suffering from mental illness. So how amazing it is that, you know, and I know that in my own life, everything is good. Everything is great. My husband is loving. We're doing so many wonderful things for Krishna. But sometimes I just go to this shadow place and I'm just irritated. Like, you know, it becomes like my default place that everything's fine and there's no reason to complain, but I just can just sort of lodge in this irritated corner, like, why this, you know? And it's such illusion. And I was really struck when you told the story of Amara, which I love. Thank you for the kirtan. Thank you for pulling Bhagavad Gita into this story. And thank you for pulling so many loose strands from so many cultures and creating this story. But I was really struck that Amara had been violated. She had been abused. And I think that, you know, here she is, this very pure, shining, effulgent person, but she was coming from a place, even before, you know, she was like coming from a place of feeling abused and feeling dirty and violated. And I think so often when, you know, when someone has been maybe experienced grief or abuse or rape or loss or divorce or this or that, they feel just so empty and violated and abused sexually or emotionally or this or that they feel like, this is who I am. And I can't come out of it. So, you know, all this good stuff, that's for the people who haven't been abused like I have, but I'm dirty and I've been abused and I can't relate. So tell me more about that. Like, how can we access that pure, shining place when I'm sitting in this place of feeling abused and violated and angry and irritated? So how, you know, it's like, how do I go from this place to that? Is it the longest place or is it the shortest place, you know?
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you for pulling me into the Sangha today. And I'm sure there are so many ways to respond, and I'm sure but just what came to me as you were speaking, that how do we go from that place? I was thinking of being able to see myself as Krishna sees me. So often we see ourselves through this lens of shadow, and naturally then we see as shadow sees us. But when we see ourselves as Krishna sees us, indestructible, you know, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you know, you're amazing. You know, you are untouched by anything of this world. And you're my friend, and I'm seated in your heart, and I'm with you, I'm witnessing, I'm guiding you again and again, and that how much we matter to him. I think that helps us to not let those things about our past that we have no power over define us. And then we start seeing that there is actually something more beautiful that we are meant for. And we start to heal when we heal this relationship of love. I think for myself, I have gone through a lot of healing, a lot of difficulties. And I find that in every place, the more time I took to connect with Krishna, the more I could feel that I'm being carried and leaving that world, you know, leaving that world of darkness behind. So I think,
I love what you said about just now about not letting the past define us, whatever is in our past.
Yeah.
And, I also love that you just said, because we talk a lot in our little, circles, Urban Devi and, our Krishna book discussions, we talk about being amazed by Krishna, amazed with a sense of wonder by the wonderful Krishna. But you just flipped it. And it was so beautiful that Krishna has told us in Bhagavad Gita that the soul is amazing, that your intrinsic own self, you are amazing. And Krishna himself is amazed by our intrinsic beauty and shining persona. How amazing is that? That we need to be amazed by Krishna's wonderfulness. He is also amazed and wants to come and embrace us and hug us. And that our abuse or our loss or our grief or our divorce or whatever we've been through doesn't define us, that Krishna is still loving us as shining, amazing souls, no matter what happened yesterday or last year or 10 years ago, because of this person or that person, or, and that I can redefine myself with the original definition that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah.
And then one other thing that was occurring to me, if I'm not talking too much, that, and it's not just like maybe someone new to this Sangha, maybe someone's going to say, okay, you guys are talking about Krishna a lot, but I don't know if I really believe in Krishna, but I love Jesus, or I love, I have this path or that, whatever you call, whatever name you call, just call, even if, like, I remember before I was a devotee, I used to read a lot of this one author, J.D. Salinger, who is kind of a guy. And he talked about the prayer of an atheist that, my dear God, if there's a God, like, I don't even know your name, or if you have a name, or if there is even a you, but I'm calling.
Yeah.
And I'm calling from an amazed place, because I want to recall that I'm amazing, and I want to see your amazingness. What do you say, Vidarbha?
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it. Yes, and I think that's, yeah, just being able to do that and see how Krishna is amazing and calling out, and especially, whatever name, however we want to call him, he's a person, so he would know that he's being called. So we can definitely find a name that is dear to our heart and just call. And I think we've all done that. Like even when I was a child, I didn't know. I mean, I still don't, but I didn't know back then. I knew so little, and yet it's very natural for us to call out. I think it's the most natural thing when we are sad or we are alone. It's just natural for us because this relationship is so natural, and it doesn't require, that much formality. Even if an elephant, like in our ancient text, an elephant can call. And Krishna understands all languages, so call him.
And
Beautiful.
Vidarbhasuta, we're getting some requests for you to share what's the best way for participants who want to connect with you afterwards. Do you have a website, especially for your coaching practice? Do you have any offerings, things of that sort of you can share so that they can connect with you afterwards?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of getting a website together, and I'll share that. I'm also planning to start like a sacred storytelling circle. And I was telling Aarti that I'm also thinking of starting a podcast or a YouTube channel where I might be telling sacred stories as well as the stories from Mahabharata, just go through the whole Mahabharata in a way that is, so I have some ideas. So I think what I'll do is I'll share all of that with you, Damodar Priya and Mother Rukmini. If you think it's all right, you can share with the rest of the group. And
for sure.
like
I said, I've gotten multiple requests. So
okay.
Please make sure.
Definitely. I'm very, very grateful.
I know I'll be one of the first subscribers because
thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Like I said, I was just moved to tears. I was literally trying to keep myself from sobbing.
No, thank you. I think I find because, and especially what is so amazing for me is to see stories from all these different places of the world and how we are feeling the same thing. And we are experiencing the same universal wisdom and the same longing. So I find that very amazing about storytelling, that, it doesn't matter where we are from.
Yeah, and you know what? It's very interesting that Krishna has put like a sense of homesickness in each of our hearts.
Mm.
There's something that we can't quite put our finger on, but it's like a homesickness. We're missing that beloved person in the beloved home where we can just be our own selves,
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to me to have you here, Vidarbha. After a long time, we've talked about this. But, I would tell all of you that Vidarbha and I, she's sometimes in Washington in our area, sometimes she's in India, but we're always trying to find a time to hang out together. And, I'm traveling or she's traveling and we always miss each other. But I was thinking, wow, maybe this is where we have to just meet up.
Yeah.
Urban Devi, and we can just share in the sisterhood and just meet up here, because everybody's always here, there, and everywhere. But this is so sacred. This
This
is
is very sacred. This is beautiful. And I just want to also share that I owe my life, my heart, everything, to Mother Rukmini. I mean, she's been such a mother to me my whole life, and received so much of love and just everything. So I'm so grateful to you.
wow. Well, we're all just water carriers. We're just trying to carry water from the ocean of Krishna and carry it and share it. So thank you so much. This is so beautiful. And Damodar Priya, should I go ahead with
Yes,
my
I was going to say this is the perfect segue for us to go into the announcement. But on behalf of everyone here, just again want to thank Vidarbhasuta Devi Dasi for coming and opening up her heart to us and really embracing us into a storytelling circle that was just really powerful. And for those who are here in person, so to say, please, if you have any feedback for Vidarbhasuta, please write it in the chat. I'll be collecting all of that and sharing it with her via email. So please go ahead and do that. And please, Rukmini, lead us away.
Wow. Yes, and I just will echo that. Thank you, and thank you, Vidarbha, my dear friend of a lifetime, sister of a lifetime. And now I feel like I'm just sharing the sisterhood by sharing your friendship with all my dear Urban Devi friends. So all of you, including Vidarbha and everyone, please put on your calendar. We have our next Urban Devi Sangha in September. It's not always the same Sunday because of holidays and whatever travel. So our next Urban Devi, please mark your calendars, is September 22nd. And the sister and friend who's presenting is Radha Prita Devi Dasi, who is, by the way, now maybe 3 months pregnant. I don't know if she's going to talk about that. But her topic is, so she's going to talk about managing conflict from the inside out. And here's a little summary. She says, we've all had those moments in relationships where conflict and misalignment bring us to our knees, leaving us to question our identity and the path we've taken. Often it's our inner turmoil that manifests as outer strife. But what if we could harness the tools from our spiritual practices to not just manage, but prevent those conflicts? How can we cultivate healthier relationships and approach our loved ones from a place of love and security rather than fear? Let's explore how to transform our interactions and find harmony within ourselves and with others. So that will be great. And I just want to share a little bit more about her background, because believe it or not, she is I guess she's a nuclear scientist. And she was working on a submarine in the Navy with a bunch of guys and trying to do whatever people do on a submarine, get answers for the military and, nuclear submarine science. So she comes from that very, very logical, linear, we would say, background. But then her heart was charmed by bhakti. So she's bringing it all together from all sides. So please be sure to join us in September and hear from this very balanced, right brain, left brained, pregnant lady, Radha Priti. So thank you all so much for being here. And Vidarbha, many people will be hearing this. I know it was a small group today. People are traveling, but it will be blown open on the internet and people will appreciate so much. So thank you. We're so grateful to you. Thank you so much.